MLB's trade deadline has come and gone. Did the Diamondbacks get fleeced? Did they do the fleecing? We're talking about it today on another Dbacks Trending podcast. My name is Derek Montilla, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX, and we had a chance to talk to Mike Hazen after the trade deadline had finally come and gone, and we saw the Diamondbacks make the flurry of moves they made there at the deadline, including moving Merrill Kelly and trading him to the Texas Rangers, along with Shelby Miller and Jordan Montgomery being traded to the Milwaukee Brewers. And that was more of a, if you want Shelby Miller, you got to take Jordan Montgomery with him situation. But Mike Hazen did have some thoughts overall on the trades, and he did give some interesting insight into possibly bringing back Merrill Kelly and what his message to the fans are after this trade deadline. But first, let's hear from Mike on his overall thoughts. This is what Mike had to say about how he thought this team and he did as a general manager at the trade deadline.
I feel like we brought back a lot of arms, something that I felt like was important as we went forward here. A lot of those guys are at the upper levels. It was not necessarily the goal. I didn't really have a goal. I wanted to get as much value as I could for any trade that we did. But it was certainly something that we were semi-focused on, all things equal. So felt like we were able to do that. Unfortunate situation, not something that we had intended when we started this season. I know I've said that in previous calls, but still, even making those phone calls to Merrill and Shelby, among the guys that I've already done, was pretty disappointing. And I think they understood, but I think everybody was pretty disappointed by this is where we ended up.
We're all very disappointed with the way the Diamondbacks 2025 season, but as Mike Hazen said there, he did a great job of going out there and acquiring a batch of young arms. When you look at the Josh Naylor trade, the Diamondbacks brought 2 young arms back, including Brandon Garcia, that has already pitched for this team at a major league level. Beyond that, the Diamondbacks traded Randall Grichuk away for Andrew Hoffman. He is another arm added to the Diamondbacks farm system as well. Then you look to the Merrill Kelly trade today. The Diamondbacks received 3 prospects from the Texas Rangers, including their number 5 overall prospect, left-handed pitcher Cole Drake, number 9 overall prospect, left-handed pitcher Mitch Bratt, and their number 13th overall prospect, right-handed pitcher David Hageman. All are starting pitchers, and all are guys that apparently Texas Rangers fans are not very happy about losing in this trade. So if you're talking about fleecing or getting fleeced, it would appear that Mike Hazen did a little bit of fleecing here of the Rangers in what he got in his return. I know many Diamondbacks fans aren't going to like the return, and as I said on our show on Thursday, unfortunately, when you get prospects back, it's very hard for you to really feel like you got the value that you should have for the players that you're trading away. And when you talk about those players, of course, you definitely mean Merrill Kelly, and Merrill Kelly is the biggest piece today. Merrill Kelly being traded to the Texas Rangers received the most in return for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and obviously he has the biggest impact. His loss is tremendous, and the Diamondbacks will have to do something, including adding Andrew Desclafani for the time being to the starting rotation, so the Diamondbacks have a full starting rotation. But here's what Mike Hazen had to say on his on giving his thoughts on the return for Merrill Kelly.
Yeah, so the 2 left-handed starters, up at the upper levels, throw strikes, good stuff. Feel like they're going to be on the radar very quickly for us here in the next year. And then Hageman is a big arm that we got lower down in the system. WVU guy, so it was mandatory that I acquired him. I'm kidding, that's a joke, but it's definitely a plus. So again, we're adding to the stable of arms that we have, and we felt like we needed to build that up. We have spent a lot of our capital in the draft over the last few years on position players, and recently we've taken some pitching, but we felt like building up where we're going to need our rotation and bullpen to be moving forward. We just felt like adding these guys to the stable of guys that we have gives us the most chances to end up with the most robust pitching staff at the major league level.
It's hard not to be impressed with the return for Merrill Kelly, considering that it's 3 young starting pitchers that were all in the top 15 prospects in the Rangers organization, and it's left that organization fairly depleted of pitching for the time being. However, it's hard to replace a guy like Merrill Kelly. It's hard to lose a guy like Merrill Kelly. He's meant so much to this team. He's meant so much to the Valley. And of course, those phone calls are never easy for a GM like Mike Hazen to make. He talked about making those tough phone calls and it being a part of the business, as well as how much Merrill Kelly has meant to this organization.
Look, I think we all understand the business, so making the phone call on a personal level is tough. But I think we all understand when we get into this that could happen. I think collectively, my sense from the conversations and how I felt is I think there's sort of this is the moment in time where there's the collective disappointment in how we've played. I think we all feel it. I think the players feel it. I certainly have taken my responsibility, shared that with them, how I didn't do a good enough job to keep this team in a position that it needed to be in to keep going. Look, I think everybody said they understood what I did. I don't think anybody's happy about it, but I think they respect and understand that, I tried to explain to them exactly what I was thinking. But it's tough. It's tough. You develop relationships with these guys, and certainly some of those guys we've had for shorter, and they were awesome. But somebody like Merrill, who came back from where he was, grew up, established himself as a major league player, and then became one of the best starting pitchers in baseball under our watch. I mean, that's even tougher. First of all, I mean, who he is as a person, his family. Again, I think in the baseball circles, when you sort of grow up with a player, and in this case, I know he wasn't necessarily like a rookie. He had played professionally and for a while and gone to AAA and then gone overseas, and so he had some experience underneath him. But I think as far as becoming a major league player and then growing up through that system with us, there's a huge attachment. And all he did for the community, all he did when he was here, he's going to be missed. And I begrudgingly making some of these trades, having to put the hat on to look at the long-term outlook of the organization. Sometimes we're required to do, but it comes at a cost, and that cost is losing people and players like Merrill Kelly. But who knows what happens in the future? And we wish him the best. And I told him go out and win the World Series with the Rangers, and I know they feel that he was a missing piece for them.
I hate that go out and win with the Texas Rangers part a lot, but I do appreciate what he's trying to say there. But what overall, of course, Merrill Kelly is somebody that, like Mike Hazen said, he's going to be very, very missed here in the Valley. Just a quietly dominant pitcher that was consistent for this team and went out there and did his job every 5 days. Now, what Mike Hazen said there at the end was a little interesting to me about what the future could hold for Merrill Kelly. And one Nick Picoro from AZ Central didn't hold back from asking the question that we all wanted to know. Not too long ago, Merrill Kelly did say that he would be open to the idea, if he got traded away, of coming back to the Diamondbacks. And Mike Hazen was asked if that conversation had been had and what that conversation was like. He didn't give us much, but this is what Hayes had to say.
I won't get into the specifics of the phone call, but we definitely touched on a few topics that may be in and around those areas.
That's good enough for me. It's not real confirmation, but it's good enough for me to know that conversation has been had, and hopefully that in the future, Merrill Kelly returning to this team is a very, very real possibility. I've said in the past that if there was a player I thought they could bring back, I think it would be Merrill. And I also think that if there was one guy I would like to see come back, no offense to Gino, because his value is very high, I felt like it would lean a little bit more towards Merrill just based on finances. I think after the season that Eugenio Suárez had, it's going to be incredibly difficult for any team to sign him this offseason when he's a free agent. And again, the Diamondbacks' chances did not get any better by trading him away to the Seattle Mariners. But they did get a pretty nice return for Gino, maybe not as good as what they got for Merrill. But here is what Mike Hazen had to say about the Gino deal coming together.
The Gino deal was percolating for a few days. We had started receiving phone calls weeks ago. We weren't making outward calls, but as you can imagine, given what he's done, we received a number of phone calls that we took, and we just said, hey, listen, we're staying in it. Obviously, if we stay in it, there's no chance of trading him, but we'll circle back if that happens. And then, we had a group of probably 3 or 4 teams that got a little more serious. I think once we started getting some firm offers, we got a firm offer. We circled back with the Mariners, and they just basically came at us with a much more aggressive from a much more aggressive standpoint, which is what happens with the Mariners, and that ignites the trade discussions that you have with other clubs once you talk to the Mariners. And they ended up adding, and we got the deal done.
This is the second team we've heard being overly aggressive. Apparently, also the Boston Red Sox were being very handsy and aggressive when it came to trying to get certain players from certain teams, and they had to apparently dial it back some with how aggressive they were attempting to be. Boston Red Sox definitely not a winner, nor would you really say that the Diamondbacks are a winner here at the trade deadline. However, if you really are looking at the future of this team and what Mike Hazen needed to do at the trade deadline in order to improve this franchise going forward, you have to be pretty satisfied with the overall results. Not only did they not trade everybody because Zac Gallen is still a member of the Diamondbacks, but they were able to unload Jordan Montgomery's contract. According to Mike Hazen, the Brewers will pick up $2 million of that as part of sending Shelby Miller along with Jordan Montgomery over to the Brewers. Monty's contract ends at the end of the year, so he is a free agent anyway, and pretty much it's just part of the cash considerations essentially for taking Shelby Miller. So no return there on the Shelby Miller deal with Jordan Montgomery. Zac Gallen, again, still part of this team, and the Diamondbacks do end up making 5 total trades to bring back a bevy of relief pitchers. However, one of the players they did bring back in the Geno deal was Tyler Locklear, who apparently will start for the Diamondbacks at first base in their upcoming series against the Athletics. Here is what Mike Hazen had to say about Locklear and the other returns for Geno.
So obviously Locklear is going to come onto the club. It wasn't a 1-for-1. I think Nick had asked me this in a previous about backfilling sort of with through trades. It just happened to line up that way. So he'll come on. He made a big adjustment in the middle of the year. He's always raked, and he's got a good approach. Has the ability to get on base. A lot of the things that we value offensively. We're going to work really hard with him at first base. But as a young first baseman that we feel like has the power and the bat potential to be a good player for us. And then again, I think along the same lines with the arms acquired, we're trying to, probably more reliever-ish for that trade. But again, just trying to add as much pitching value as we could.
So the Diamondbacks end up adding young starting pitching, potentially a first baseman of the future, and young relief pitching in these deals that they made. And in the end of the day, they lose Josh Naylor, Randall Grichuk, Eugenio Suárez, Merrill Kelly, Shelby Miller, and Jordan Montgomery. Again, a lot of players moved, a lot of deals made by the Diamondbacks. However, there was rumors and talk of potentially seeing some of the core of this team traded away, and those were simply that, rumors, maybe overreactions to things Mike Hazen said about the fact that he does receive phone calls on those players, but not necessarily is considering anything at all, right? But the biggest surprise here might be the fact that Zac Gallen is still a D-back, and that's simply because him and Merrill Kelly have been the talk of trade rumors going back as far as April with their expiring contracts at the end of the year. The Diamondbacks do have the ability to now offer Zac Gallen a qualifying offer. If he should turn that down, the Diamondbacks do receive that compensatory pick for the draft in between rounds 1 and round 2. If Gallen decides to return to the Diamondbacks on that 1-year deal, well, quite frankly, even though a lot of people are a little frustrated with Zac and might not want to see that, it could definitely help the Diamondbacks shortage for starting pitching starting in 2026. Maybe we even see a situation where Zac Gallen is back on a qualifying offer and Merrill Kelly returns on a new deal so that we don't lose either of these guys. But for the time being, Zac Gallen is staying, and Mike Hazen was a bit surprised by the fact that Gallen is still a part of this team. Here's what Hazen had to say about Gallen staying and his shock about not getting the deal done.
I'm not going to get into the specifics of negotiations. Obviously his name came up a decent amount. That shouldn't surprise anybody given the talent. We didn't get anything accomplished. And yeah, very much it's important for him and for us to continue in the rotation in the second half. There's a lot to play for. Every game still matters for us. I understand that sort of where the expectations from what I should have given what I just did to the roster. I do. But we still have a very good rotation going out there every 5th day, and we should have every opportunity to go out there and play good baseball. I'm a little surprised that I don't know. I haven't even seen. I know sometimes these deals trickle out later. That I think what ended up happening, honestly, and it really probably bled into the Geno discussions as well, is there seemed to be a few teams that dropped out here at the last minute, meaning the last few days that became sellers, and I think that had a material impact on the market. And then once the the downstream effects of that is options for teams. And then as soon as teams that are buying, I would be, and if I was that case too, is sometimes, I think the decision to go get somebody for a lot cheaper um, can become part of the calculus. And I don't know that that's what happened in this case. Like we had a decent amount of teams interested, as you can imagine. It just didn't. Nothing. No deal came across.
I like what Hazen said there because we did see on the final day of the trade deadline teams that we did not think were going to be sellers suddenly turn into sellers. And when you talk about a fire sale, uh, I can't think of a bigger fire sale than what the Minnesota Twins did, right? But we also saw within our own division the San Francisco Giants unexpectedly sell off more than just relievers, including their closer. Which I'm happy to not deal with Duvall anymore in our division. Also, Mike Yastrzemski, who's kind of killed the Diamondbacks at times, is no longer a part of that team. But the positive here is that the Diamondbacks didn't need to be desperate. They didn't need to move Zac Gallen. As Mike Hazen has said in the past, none of these moves were done in order to shed roster or shed payroll, right? So Zac Gallen still being here is a reflection that the Diamondbacks didn't get the deals that they wanted for Gallen, despite the fact that his value has kind of dropped. It would appear teams were lowballing the Diamondbacks, and they went ahead and held on to the Gallen. Feels like the right move. And then again, at the end of the year, you have Gallen most likely reject a qualifying offer and you get a draft pick for him. If the Diamondbacks did not receive an offer for a draft pick that was a first rounder from any team, then they're rightfully so to reject any of those trade offers because they will get essentially an end of the first round pick when Zac Gallen does reject that qualifying offer. Or once again, like I said, if he doesn't, him still being on this team is an asset for this team considering their needs in 2026. But 2026 is something that a lot of fans are concerned about. And not just 2026, watching this team for the rest of 2025, right? This is a team that is still fairly intact. Again, 5 trades, 6 players total. One of those 6 players was not currently active in Jordan Montgomery, and Shelby Miller also was on the injured list, though he was supposed to return Friday for this team. So they do have some holes to fill. However, they are giving some of these young players that they've already acquired through these trades opportunities to come up and get a shot this season. So fans are understandably upset, and Mike Hazen understands that. He knows that fans are going to be upset, and he empathizes with that. He doesn't think that these moves are going to be popular moves or it's going to be something that the fan base embraces. But he does have a message to fans, and he also has some expectations on what he thinks this team will be in the second half after this trade deadline has come and gone.
Obviously, I think I've repeated myself many different times on this that we're exceptionally disappointed in where the season went. I think it, unfortunately, in my job and where we're at looking forward and trying to put the best team on the field for 2026, certainly the best in for the rest of 2025 to our ability, but in 2026, I have to face the reality of where our feet are, how we're playing, and we just didn't play well enough. And where we were in relation to those teams we were chasing was not a good spot for me to feel like we have in years past. Even when we haven't been in a playoff spot, we've bought. Unfortunately, this team wasn't playing at a caliber or way that I felt the same. And I have to make those decisions. And if that those baseball decisions don't always align with what I know the fans want to see, and I respect that, and we understand, and I don't do that lightly. This is very complicated to make that decision given how all in we went in at the beginning of the season. A competitive one. Yeah, it may look a little different, take a different shape offensively. Even with those guys in the lineup this last week, we haven't really been smoking the baseball. So we need to get back. I know the trade deadline was probably a little bit of a distraction. It's not an excuse, but I acknowledge that it was probably a distraction. I would expect that we get back now. We're cleared through this. Especially the younger players that I don't know if they were worried about being traded. We never really talked about it all. So that's behind us now. And I want us to go out there and play competitive baseball.
Well, considering that we have to cover this team for 2 more months of a regular season, and you all have to watch it, hopefully they do that exact thing and go out there and play competitive baseball. I think that's all we can hope to see, and that's honestly, I think all we want to see. I don't think there are expectations for the Diamondbacks 2025 season, but we don't really want to see them sit there and go 1-8 over their last 9 games like we just saw leading into the trade deadline. So thank you guys so much for your time. We will be back, of course, with another post-game show. Until then, hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm at cap_caveman with a K. The show is at PHNX_Dbacks, but as always, all roads lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We thank you for your time. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it is more fun when you realize sometimes trades just have to happen.